Supermassive Games have a reputation for making cinematic horror experiences where player choices can make the difference between characters living or dying gruesome, gory deaths. Their greatest hit, Until Dawn, was critically praised when it released in 2015 for its gorgeous yet haunting atmosphere and meaningful decisions which made every playthrough unique in its own way. Since then, Supermassive have gone on to start a series of games part of what they called the Dark Pictures Anthology, starting with Man of Medan in 2019 and releasing a new entry each year until 2023 with Switchback VR. Directive 8020 comes after 3 whole years without a Dark Pictures game, launching as the beginning to a second season of games. The question is whether the wait was worth it or not. Unfortunately, while there are a lot of things to like about this sci-fi survival horror experience, Directive 8020 falls flat with the same issues previous Dark Pictures games have fallen victim to, while creating entirely new problems with its attempts to inject more gameplay into the anthology. Before we get started though, I'd like to give a huge thanks to Bandai Namco for sending me a review copy of the game. As always, it's worth mentioning that I receive no monetary compensation for these reviews, so all thoughts and opinions are entirely my own. I'd also like to thank I'm Neta OK for tagging along with me as I played, since I'm not the best when it comes to playing horror games all by myself. Link to her channel will be in the description. One more thing, the footage you're seeing in the background is exclusively from the first 3 chapters, or episodes as they're called, of the game, and I will try my best to avoid explicit spoilers. With that all out of the way, let's get into the review. Directive 8020 takes place in the near future, where Earth is dying and humanity's last hope for survival is to seek other planets to live on. 2 spacecrafts, the Cassiopeia and the Andromeda, are sent to planet Tau Ceti F to pave the way for the future of mankind. The Cassiopeia's task is to scout out the planet and clear landing for the Andromeda, the larger vessel of the two containing a large unspecified number of people. You control the various different crewmates of the Cassiopeia, from sleep engineer Thomas Carter to leader Nolan Stafford and co-pilot Brianna Young, and everyone else in between, making choices for them and developing their personalities and relationships to each other in the process. When a meteorite strikes the Cassiopeia, an alien threat taking the form of a shapeshifter who can imitate any of the crew comes aboard, sending its crew on a spiral of paranoia, mystery, and hidden corporate conspiracies. The game wears its influences heavily on its sleeves, very clearly drawing from classic movies such as Alien and The Thing. The story is a very slow burn for the first few episodes, and so I can totally understand why some people might bounce off of it pretty hard. It does pay off with a very climactic and action-packed final act, but the journey of getting there matters just as much, if not more, for player retention and engagement. While I enjoyed the climax of the story, it did feel rather sudden, almost as if the game had nothing else noteworthy to say or do in the final act. The plot twist is handled surprisingly well, and is hinted at in very subtle and clever ways. It did what all good twists should strive to do. It recontextualizes previous scenes and fundamentally shifts how you view the story in a meaningful way. Of course, no spoilers here, so I won't elaborate any further than that. I do certainly wish that they did more with this twist, since it comes very late into the story, and so the repercussions aren't able to be explored as thoroughly as one might expect from the sci-fi genre. While I'm sure that other people may have an easier time connecting with the cast, I didn't care all too much for the Cassiopeia crew. They're not all unlikable assholes, but they're not the most engaging or interesting characters for that matter, instead fitting into the usual archetypes of the horror genre. If it counts for anything, I didn't want to see any of them get hurt, but I wasn't completely devastated when unfortunate events started unfolding around them either. Because of various circumstances, mainly disability, I wasn't able to get this review out closer to the game's release date. However, an upside of this is that now it's Pride Month, giving me the perfect segue into talking about the queer representation of Directive 8020. Unless I missed any details, which I'm sure I might have, 2 characters are confirmed to be queer. One is explicitly mentioned as being gay through dialogue, and another is confirmed to be asexual through a pride flag present on their desk. These characters aren't treated as any less than the others, nor are they depicted as mere stereotypes, and are given the freedom and respect to live as they are. Happy Pride Month, everyone! Unfortunately, the uncanny facial animations and awkward, stiff dialogue accentuated by the poor vocal performances make it incredibly difficult to deeply appreciate these characters, and ironically enhances the mystery of who is human and who is an alien imposter. Whether this is intentional or not is up for debate, but if it is intentional, then it's a half-baked attempt to throw the player off. That isn't to say that the performances are always bad. There were a few standout moments from my playthrough where I could tell the actors were truly trying their best with the material given to them. But at the same time, there were also some really awfully performed scenes that made me feel like I was playing some sort of parody game.
If our survey is successful, the Andromeda will land on Tau Ceti F and begin the new chapter of civilization. The future starts now, with Corinth.
While Supermassive still have a long way to go when it comes to facial animations, the overall art style and presentation of the game is consistently impressive as well. The soundtrack, especially the intermission songs between chapters, are enjoyable and do a good job to keep you immersed in the world. It's nothing that I'd actively go out of my way to listen to outside of the context of playing the game, but it's not offensively bad either. Unlike previous releases from Supermassive, Directive 8020 attempts to innovate with actual gameplay sequences beyond QuickTime events and walking around and inspecting things. No longer are you tied to fixed camera angles with awkward, stiff movement, but instead the gameplay sequences take a third-person, over-the-shoulder camera's perspective, all too familiar to these types of adventure games. There are even brief segments where the game becomes first-person whenever you're crawling through vents, which had me bracing for a jump scare each and every time. Basic puzzles are littered throughout the game's approximate 10 hours of playtime, often with repeating gimmicks which feel more like padding than anything of value. And then there are the stealth sections. Directive 8020 has so many long, drawn-out stealth sections that at a certain point had me groaning out of irritation. Like the puzzles, the stealth mechanics fail to innovate or provide anything interesting to justify this many of them. These set pieces always involve you crouching around, trying to head from point A to point B without being spotted by a threat, and sometimes even solving a basic puzzle along the way. The enemy AI is incredibly poor, following strict patrol routes and struggling to spot you unless you literally stand in their field of vision for multiple seconds. Even if you do get caught, you have a chance to stun the monster and break line of sight again, or even just run to the end point of the scene. Depending on what difficulty setting you play on, your stun attack can either have infinite reuses or a short cooldown time before you can use it again. So unless you're playing on the highest difficulty, which has no stuns from what I've heard, you can just run through all of these sections and ignore the stealth entirely. I actually find this way of playing way more entertaining as you make a mad dash from objective to objective, while fending off threats instead of cowering behind cover, waiting for the monsters to sluggishly move along their set patrols to a spot where you can actually safely start moving. A stealth section near the end of the game has the player get forcibly caught regardless of how well you did, which was utterly irritating. Why should I care about stealth then if I'm just going to get caught and forced to flee in a set piece anyway? In terms of player choices, the obvious choices are almost always the right ones, so unless you're overthinking it, the chances of actually getting someone killed is fairly minimal. That is to say, however, I did get 3 characters killed on my first run. 2 playables and 1 NPC. One died in a stealth section because I messed up a QuickTime event, and the other 2 died because of poor choices I made in stressful scenarios. It seems as if the game isn't able to recall certain events or choices perfectly all the time. There were multiple instances throughout my run where contradictions would run rampant, such as the character speaking as if someone else was still alive, even though the entire crew was on the same page that they were dead. It wasn't an imposter saying this either, so there's no room for plausible deniability. At the same time, scenes feel haphazardly stitched together with awkward cuts and pauses in dialogue that damages the cinematic presentation the game is going for, and the attempted hidden loading screens in between major set pieces feel very out of place too. There's a lot to uncover after rolling the credits for the first time, and the brand new Turning Points feature does allow you to quickly jump in at whatever point in whichever episode you like, but the lack of a speed up or skip option means that you'll be forced to sit through repeated scene after repeated scene before you can get to anything new or exciting. It's when I started backtracking through the narrative that the illusion of choice began to falter. A single character being dead in a dialogue scene doesn't remove much of substance other than a quick one-liner reminding you that they're still in the same room. Don't get me wrong, I understand that these types of sacrifices need to be made in order for games of this production value to release within a reasonable amount of time, but it does hurt the image of a truly branching narrative. While characters being dead doesn't affect as much as I'd like it to, there are plenty of other story branches that do have meaningful, long-term consequences, which were a delight to see. Those looking for the co-op movie night experience the Dark Pictures games are known for will find the lack of online multiplayer at launch incredibly disappointing. While its implementation is planned for a future update, as of the time of this review, only local multiplayer is available, with players choosing which of the 6 playable characters to play as and passing the controller between each other in between scenes. Directive 8020 has a lot to like. From its impressive visuals to tense atmosphere and excellent soundtrack, it certainly feels capable of delivering a narrative experience unlike any other in the Dark Pictures Anthology. However, as you descend deeper into the horrors lurking beneath the surface, the countless issues reveal themselves, dragging down what was almost a great debut for the second season of these games. Do you think I was a little bit too harsh, or are you similarly disappointed by its various shortcomings? Let me know in the comments down below, and have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Until next time, take care of yourselves.